explaining the new BC living wage rates across 25 regions. All right, so yeah, let's dive into the topic of the new BC living wage rates for all 25 regions. This is super important, especially for families trying to make ends meet in a province as diverse as British Columbia. Okay, so what exactly is a living wage, and why does it matter so much? Right? Let's break it down step by step, shall we? Hashtag, what is a living wage? First things first, the living wage isn't the same as the minimum wage. The minimum wage is a legal baseline an employer must pay, but honestly, yeah, it's often not enough to meet basic living costs. The living wage, on the other hand, is calculated based on what a family needs to cover essential expenses like housing, food, childcare, and transportation. Okay, here's the thing. The living wage isn't just about surviving. It's about living with dignity, right? It's designed to help families avoid debt and reliance on social assistance programs. It's a way to ensure that workers can fully participate in their communities without constantly worrying about money. I see how this could make a big difference for so many people. Hashtag, why does the living wage vary by region? Now, you might be wondering why the living wage differs across the 25 regions in BC. Well, okay, it all comes down to the cost of living in each area. Take Metro Vancouver, for example. The cost of housing there is, through the roof, which means families need a higher income to make ends meet, right? Compare that to smaller communities, where housing might be more affordable and you'll see the wage rate is slightly lower. But don't get me wrong. Every region has its own unique challenges. I see why tailoring the living wage to local conditions makes sense. Hashtag, how is the living wage calculated? Okay, so let's talk about how these numbers are actually calculated. It's not just a random guess, you know. Researchers look at things like average rents, grocery bills, transportation costs, and even childcare fees, right? They also factor in basic non-essential expenses, like clothing, and some savings for emergencies. What's really interesting is that these calculations assume a two-parent family with 2 children, where both parents are working full-time. Yeah, that means the numbers might not fully capture the struggles of single parents or individuals, but it's a good benchmark. Hashtag, what are the new wage rates? All right, here's the part you've been waiting for. What are the actual rates? The new living wages for 2024 reflect rising costs in nearly every category. In Metro Vancouver, for instance, the rate is among the highest in the province, hovering around $24 to $26 per hour. Yeah, in Victoria, the numbers are similar, which makes sense given the high cost of housing and transportation there. In smaller communities like Prince George or Cranbrook, the rates are lower, closer to $18 to $20 per hour, right? But even these rates highlight the gap between the minimum wage and what's actually needed to get by. Hashtag, why is this important? Okay, let's get into why this matters. For many families, the minimum wage just doesn't cut it. Imagine trying to pay rent, buy groceries, cover childcare, and still have something left over for emergencies. It's nearly impossible on minimum wage, especially in places like Vancouver or Victoria. Right? That's where the living wage comes in. It's not just a number. It's a call to action. Employers who adopt living wage policies are saying, yeah, we value our employees and want them to thrive. It's about creating a fairer, more sustainable economy. Hashtag, how rising costs impact the living wage. Okay, another thing to note is how inflation and rising costs affect